Have you ever heard of meat that can last for years, yes, years, without a single second in a refrigerator? Sounds too good to be true, right? Guess again. The Amish, famous for living off-grid and maintaining a simple lifestyle in harmony with nature, have been doing exactly that for generations. They've perfected an astonishing method of preserving meat that doesn't rely on modern technology. No freezers, no chemical preservatives, no fancy industrial equipment. Just time-tested techniques handed down through the centuries, fortified by strong community traditions and, more recently, confirmed in studies by food scientists who are absolutely amazed at how effective these methods really are. This is how the Amish store meat without a refrigerator, and the shocking part is that it just doesn't spoil. If this doesn't make your jaw drop, nothing will. I want you to imagine juicy slabs of beef and tender cuts of pork, all meticulously preserved using little more than salt, smoke, and the watchful expertise of people who have been doing this longer than most families in the Western world can trace back their lineage. Think about it. Living in a world with no electricity and zero reliance on grocery store freezers forces creativity. It's an old tradition, but it's far from outdated, especially in a time when more folks are exploring off-grid living and searching for self-sufficiency. Experts have recently revisited these old-fashioned techniques, and some of the data will surprise you. Because here's the thing, it's not just a quaint practice lost in history, it's alive, well, and thriving among Amish communities across the United States. Now, buckle up because this exploration will uncover details you've probably never heard before. It's not just about throwing salt on your meat. It's about precise methods, family secrets, and the kind of communal sharing of knowledge that's becoming rare in our breakneck digital age. You'll hear from Amish folks themselves, wives, husbands, grandparents, who each have their own treasured spin on this ancient culinary art form. You'll get a peek at what reputable experts are saying right now about these practices. And by the end, you'll understand exactly why these centuries-old methods might just stand up to all our modern preservation techniques. Are you ready? Let's dive right in. Before plunging into the nitty-gritty of meat preservation, it helps to know a bit about the Amish context. The Amish live in tight-knit communities that typically reject or limit modern conveniences such as cars, electricity, and, in most cases, mainstream technology like computers and smartphones. Many Amish people still use horses and buggies for transportation. Their days begin early, often before sunrise, and revolve around farming, woodworking, and family-based crafts. When it comes to living off the land, they're in a league of their own. They don't make these lifestyle choices to be quaint or old-fashioned for show. Rather, it's a deeply rooted religious and cultural decision that focuses on simplicity, modesty, and community solidarity. And while the Amish have been in North America for centuries, they continue to expand their settlements. According to a 2023 demographic study by the Young Center for Anabaptist and Pietist Studies, the Amish population has been growing steadily, increasing the need to preserve substantial amounts of food for large families. Ask any Amish mother of 10 children how she keeps so much food on the table with no reliance on refrigerators or freezers, and she might laugh, because it's second nature to her. "We've always done it this way," says Ruth Yoder, an Amish woman living in Pennsylvania. "We learned it from our mothers and grandmothers. Nothing special, that's just how we do things." But what might seem nothing special to some is making a lot of people scratch their heads in amazement. Studies from leading universities, including a 2022 research project from Pennsylvania State University's Department of Food Science, have shown that certain Amish preservation techniques effectively keep harmful bacteria at bay. This should definitely pique your interest if you've ever tossed away a questionable piece of meat after just a few days in your fridge. Understanding the basics of meat preservation. Meat is an abundant source of nutrition. It's also prone to spoiling if not handled correctly. In typical modern households, we deal with that by using refrigerators or freezers, which keep meat cool enough to slow bacterial growth. Unfortunately, these big appliances rely on electricity 24/7. They can break down, they can be costly, and they certainly won't work if you're trying to live off the grid. So, how can meat be stored for more than a couple of days without risking the growth of harmful microorganisms like Salmonella or E. coli? For the Amish, the solution revolves around age-old methods of curing, canning, dehydrating, and smoking. Each one requires a careful balance of temperature, airflow, salt, sugar, spices, or acidity. And although the core techniques are ancient, modern experts have examined them to verify how safe they really are. One example that's attracted recent attention came in a 2023 collaborative study between an agricultural extension office in Ohio and a local Amish community. Scientists observed the entire process of butchering and preserving pork, then tested it regularly over several months. Their conclusion was that, as long as the meat was salted and processed correctly, it remained stable for a surprisingly long time, often well beyond a year. Here's how it works in plain language. Certain methods reduce the water content in the meat, making it inhospitable for bacteria. Salt draws out moisture, while canning involves sealing the meat in containers that are heated and vacuum sealed to eradicate bacteria. Smoking adds another layer of dryness, and sometimes a bit of heat that further protects the product. There are plenty of small details that can vary from one Amish family to the next. Some prefer sweeter cures, others use more spices. But the key is always the same: removing water and preventing bacterial growth. It sounds straightforward, but mastering these methods can take a lifetime of practice. Curing and smoking, the time-tested favorites. Curing might be one of the oldest methods of preserving meat known to humankind. In most Amish communities, the process usually starts with a fresh cut of pork, often right from a hog butchered on the farm. The meat is then packed in salt, sometimes mixed with a bit of sugar or brown sugar, and stored in a cool area. Over the span of several weeks, the salt draws moisture out of the muscle tissues. By the end, you're left with a piece of meat that's incredibly flavorful and, most importantly, inhospitable to bacterial growth. Smoking is often the next step. After the initial cure, the meat is hung in a smokehouse, a small building or shed designated solely for this purpose. The smoke is produced by burning hardwood like hickory, applewood, or maple, each of which can lend a distinct flavor profile to the final product. The smoke helps further dry the meat while imparting a rich, smoky taste. It's also believed to add a layer of protection against bacteria and other spoilage organisms, though experts note that the drying is the primary factor in preventing spoilage. Andrew Miller, a farmer in Holmes County, Ohio, has been smoking his own pork belly for decades. When asked if he ever worries about it spoiling, he grins. "If you hang it right and let it smoke enough, you can keep that meat all year. That's how my father did it, how my grandfather did it, and it just plain works." When local agricultural extension experts tested some of these smoked cuts last fall, they found them safe to eat after more than a year of storage, as long as they were kept in proper conditions. That's pretty hard to believe in our refrigerator-dependent times, but science backs it up. Canning, not just for vegetables anymore. When most people think of canning, they picture rows of glass jars filled with peaches, tomatoes, or jam. Yet, in Amish homes, canning meat is almost as popular as canning produce. Beef, chicken, pork, and even venison are commonly preserved this way. The process is fairly straightforward, but must be done carefully to ensure safety. Typically, the meat is cooked or partially cooked, packed into sterile jars, and then processed in a pressure canner. A pressure canner is crucial because it brings the contents to a temperature above boiling, which kills off Clostridium botulinum spores, the nasties responsible for botulism. The result is a shelf-stable jar of meat that can last for several years if stored in a cool, dark place. Researchers have looked into the safety of home-canned meat for quite some time, with a renewed interest in the last 5 years due to the surge in homesteading. A 2021 paper published by the Journal of Food Protection examined various home canning techniques, including those used in Amish communities. The researchers noted that while the methods are safe when done correctly, any deviation, such as improper sterilization or insufficient pressure, can lead to dangerous contamination. Despite the stern warnings, Amish women like Elizabeth Fisher of northern Indiana maintain that her family has never had a problem. "We make sure to follow the rules," she says. "Always the right amount of pressure, always the right length of time. It's the same process our mothers and grandmothers used, and they taught us to be meticulous." It's this meticulous approach that ensures the meat remains safe. These families are not blindly using old methods. They're taught from a young age precisely how to can, how much time to process, and what to look for in terms of cleanliness and proper sealing. Dehydration and jerky-style preservation. Another method common among some Amish families is turning meat into jerky. Now, jerky might make you think of gas station snacks. But in the Amish community, dehydrating meat is a serious business. The process starts with very lean cuts. Fat doesn't dehydrate well and involves soaking slices in a salt and spice solution. Then, the meat is slowly dried at low temperatures, sometimes in a specially designed dehydrator that doesn't require electricity. Solar dehydrators or even wood-fired stoves can accomplish the job if done carefully. Once the meat is thoroughly dried, it can last for months, sometimes up to a year, in airtight containers. The flavor can vary widely depending on the marinade. Some Amish families prefer a simple salt and pepper approach, while others incorporate sweeteners like maple syrup or honey. There's a new wave of interest among alternative living enthusiasts and survivalists in making homemade jerky because it's lightweight, calorie-dense, and doesn't need refrigeration. According to a 2022 Survival and Preparedness Conference hosted in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, Amish families demonstrated dehydrating methods that left participants amazed at how simple yet effective the process can be. Modern studies weigh in, and they're impressed. It's not just casual observers or survivalists who are fascinated by these age-old methods. Food scientists and agricultural researchers have been increasingly studying the Amish approach to meat preservation. Dr. Margaret Rowland, a professor at Ohio State University specializing in microbiology of food, recently took part in an investigative study. The study analyzed multiple preservation techniques within several Amish communities in Ohio, comparing bacterial growth rates in salted, smoked, and canned meats to those kept in standard refrigerators. The results showed that when performed correctly, the Amish methods kept bacterial counts at safe levels for surprisingly long durations. In a 2023 interview, Dr. Rowland said, "The Amish are basically operating small-scale artisanal preservation labs. They follow traditional methods that have been refined over generations. It's no wonder these practices are as safe and effective as they are. There's a wealth of empirical knowledge there." Dr. Rowland went on to mention that modern technology can sometimes lull us into forgetting basic principles of food safety. She believes a blend of old methods with modern oversight could help more people become less reliant on constant refrigeration. Additionally, a food safety extension workshop led by the University of Kentucky found that while these methods are indeed valid, education is paramount. There are absolutely risks if someone cuts corners or fails to meet the right conditions. But that's where Amish tradition excels. It's not just about reading a recipe online. It's about learning hands-on from family and community elders. This communal training drastically lowers the chance of mistakes. Common misconceptions and clarifications. People sometimes hear about meat lasting for years and immediately envision rotten, moldy slabs lurking in a dark root cellar. The reality, of course, is far from that. Stored properly, cured or canned meat can look, smell, and taste perfectly fine. It has a distinct flavor profile, saltier, smokier, or otherwise, but rotten is the last word you'd associate with it. Another misconception is that you just slap on some salt and forget about it. In truth, Amish families closely monitor their preserved meats. They'll often do a visual check for mold or slime. They'll sniff it to detect any off odors. This level of careful attention to detail is crucial. Emma Stoltzfus, a mother of 5 living in Lancaster County, says, "We're taught never to ignore any oddities. If it smells strange or looks strange, we don't use it. And that rarely happens, but we stay alert. It's part of how we're raised to take care of our families." Then there's the question of regulations. Modern food safety guidelines in the U.S. can be strict, often for good reason, especially when it comes to commercial sales. However, for personal consumption, families are generally free to can, cure, or smoke their own meats. In Amish communities, if someone sells meat to an English outsider, the Amish term for non-Amish, they must often comply with local regulations. But many Amish entrepreneurs choose to stick to baked goods, crafts, and produce sales, leaving their preserved meats for family use or for trade within their community. Incorporating the Amish approach into modern life. You might be wondering, can I do this at home? The short answer is yes, but proceed with caution and do your research. While you're not obligated to adopt an Amish lifestyle or forsake your refrigerator, It's possible to integrate some of these methods into your own kitchen routine. You could try your hand at making homemade jerky or experiment with water bath canning fruits and vegetables before moving on to pressure canning meats. Just make sure you follow trusted guidelines. Universities and cooperative extension offices across the country provide detailed safety protocols. Some modern homesteaders and off-grid enthusiasts have already started a mini revival of Amish preservation techniques. You can find endless anecdotal success stories on homesteading forums, though they don't always include the rigorous checks or generational wisdom that Amish communities rely on. Dr. Rowland points out that the difference often lies in that inherited knowledge. The Amish are taught how to do this from birth. They watch parents, grandparents, aunts, and uncles. They don't take shortcuts. She suggests that any newcomer interested in these methods invests time in learning from reliable resources, or, if possible, from someone experienced in their own community. Real-life family testimonies. Let's hear more from some Amish folks who regularly practice these methods. Anna King, a grandmother of 12 living near Shipshewana, Indiana, spoke about her family's annual butchering tradition. "We butcher pigs in late fall just before the weather turns really cold," she explains. "It's a community affair. Everyone helps, and then we cure the pork in large wooden barrels filled with salt. It stays in there for weeks, and we check it every day, adjusting the salt if needed." Jacob Lapp from the same settlement described how the final product is smoked. "We hang the hams in our smokehouse and burn hickory logs for about a week, sometimes more. The smell is something wonderful, makes your mouth water. Then we let it rest, wrapped in cloth. We can cut off slices whenever we want. If we keep it wrapped and dry, it stays good for ages." Elizabeth Fisher, mentioned before, sums it up nicely. "It's not magic, it's just being careful. Some folks think we're behind the times because we don't have electric freezers. But we manage just fine. Our pantry is always full." Recent interest, future possibilities. In the last few years, there's been a surge of interest in traditional food preservation techniques. People are worried about supply chain issues, rising food costs, and the ecological impact of large-scale refrigeration. Articles on websites dedicated to homesteading, prepping, and sustainable living have embraced Amish methods with open arms. Even some mainstream outlets ran stories in 2022 and 2023 about how these old-school approaches might be the key to food security in uncertain times. Interestingly, some Amish communities aren't too thrilled about the sudden rush of curious outsiders wanting to peer into their smokehouses. These are close-knit folks who value privacy. Nonetheless, curiosity and admiration continue to grow. And while the Amish might not be seeking publicity, their methods are resonating with a broader audience eager to rediscover low-tech solutions for everyday problems. So, where does it go from here? Experts like Dr. Rowland believe there's potential for bridging the gap between traditional and modern methods. She envisions more formal cooperative programs where non-Amish farmers and families can learn firsthand from Amish communities, while also adhering to rigorous safety checks. This could spur a whole new wave of artisanal meat products that are shelf-stable, which might even expand local economies in some rural areas. Nothing is set in stone yet, but the conversation is happening in academic circles, sustainability movements, and, of course, the Amish communities themselves. We live in a world driven by technology, with entire industries built upon the premise that food must be frozen or refrigerated to remain safe. But here's the Amish community, peacefully continuing a tradition that predates electricity, storing meat for years at a time without modern cooling. And it works. It's not just a relic of olden days. It's very much alive, tested, and proven both anecdotally and scientifically. As we've seen, the techniques involve salting, smoking, canning, and dehydrating, each executed with painstaking care and meticulous attention to detail. Generations of knowledge are poured into every ham hung in a smokehouse or every jar filled with tender beef. Experts who have visited and tested these methods walk away stunned by how these so-called simple strategies stand up to modern scrutiny. Meanwhile, Amish folks like Andrew Miller and Ruth Yoder keep doing what they've always done, shrugging off the amazement because to them it's second nature. So, if the idea of storing meat without a refrigerator amazes you, and if you're considering trying it yourself, do your homework, learn from reliable sources, and perhaps look to the Amish as living proof that the old ways aren't necessarily outdated. It's a glimpse into a sustainable, community-focused approach that might hold lessons for anyone concerned with rising costs, environmental sustainability, and being more self-sufficient. In a world that seems to move at breakneck speed, maybe we can all learn something from people who choose to slow down and rely on the land, time-tested wisdom, and each other. That's the heart of how the Amish store meat without a refrigerator. It doesn't spoil for years because these methods are not merely quaint or mystical. They're grounded in practical science, and they've stood the test of time. It's a remarkable testament to the power of tradition, community knowledge, and respect for the natural rhythms that shape our food. And in this ever-changing modern landscape, that might just be the most radical notion of all.